are you? I told you we have a who in the world interviews different people like I did interview, and I guess you do as well now, right? We went
Yeah,
from tattoo artist to Cheap Trick to somebody who saved our is helped protect us. Such a good thing and really a great cause to talk about today, isn't it, Frank?
yeah, we got quite a selection.
Yeah. So Paul D. Fleming's with us. D. Paul Fleming. How are you, sir? And it's amazing. Thank you for your service. And when you talked about the books you're writing and how you're really trying to help veterans that are going through a really hard time, that's your mission, isn't it?
That is, it is.
So tell us how that started for you, that you decided to be an advocate like this and be an author.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for letting me onto your platform. Huge fan. You
Oh,
guys are
thank you.
you guys are pretty cool. Not to mention, there's a World War II Marine son in the crowd. All right, I always love it. Both grandfathers served in World War II. One landed on the beach in Normandy, and one rode submarines throughout Japan. So that's kind of where it all starts, right? Family members following in their footsteps and going into service. And I did 4 years, 6 years total, but the Navy retired me on injuries, which started the VA baton death march, so to speak, which is, if anybody's tried to manage their way through the VA system, it's a nightmare. So trying to cliff note this, when I came out of the military, it was because I was severely injured. And then I got tossed into the VA mess. And from there, I became suicidal.
Mm.
So fast forward a handful of decades, I survived, in case you haven't figured that part out. But now my mission is to help veterans deal with suicide. We're losing 50 veterans a day to suicide. And that number is honestly probably conservative. It's probably much higher than that.
Wow. Go ahead, Frank, with your question.
Well, yeah, I got a lot of questions about things. I mean, my father was in the army, part of during World War II, part of the Great Generation. And anyway, did you see a difference between the veterans coming back from the wars, Vietnam War, the Gulf Wars, and what have you, and those of the World War II veterans? Because there aren't too many World War II veterans left. But the studies that you might have done, have you seen that at that percentage of people from World War II veterans committing suicide compared to Vietnam and the Gulf veterans or Korean veterans? So let's go back to the Korean ones since they're still alive. Do you see a percentage change between those wars and those veterans with suicidal problems?
No, the only thing that doesn't really exist is statistics to support World War II veterans post Vietnam era. If you kind of followed that, they really didn't track it. But what do we have? 12 million men and women in uniform at the height of World War II. So it is the largest buildup in the history of the United States. So if you extrapolate what you know as a veteran and what we know as family members, then we can kind of say, was World War II vets, Korea, Vietnam, post-Vietnam, all in that same quagmire? The answer is absolutely. It wasn't even talked about in its basic sense. And that's one of the big hills that we have to climb. And it's one of the hills that I'm attacking with all my energy, is
I can,
getting people to talk about trauma in turn so that we can stop killing ourselves. To answer your question about the difference between Vietnam, I'm a firsthand post-Vietnam veteran. When I came out, it wasn't nearly as bad as the Vietnam veterans. I mean, my heart aches for the Vietnam veterans coming out, and that mess, that baby killer vile mentality lasted literally until September 11th, 2001. And then, like the story I like to tell, the great dysfunctional family, right?
yeah, I mean, it's wow. let's kind of jump back a bit and say, well, why the books then? You have your mission to do this, but why the books? Are you there, sir? All right.
You guys, did I lose you?
Yeah, you're back. You're back after losing for a second. So why the books? Why did you write the books?
So, so I was asked, I don't know how religious you guys are, but I have a deep, deep faith. And I was asked to tell my story first from my childhood, right? And then from there, I was told, listen, you need to tell your story about suicide and the VA and your struggles and so on. So I fought for years, decades. There's no way I'm going to write a book. No way. And I lost. So baby Jesus came along, slapped me upside the head and said, write the damn book. So I'm writing the books.
Okay. And those books relate to suicide in a big way to kind of explain book one and then now the second book coming out.
Yes. The heart of the next book that's coming out in mid-May, titled A Date with Suicide. The heart of it is, it starts by talking about what a veteran is. Unfortunately, far too many veterans don't feel like veterans. And sometimes veterans get in our own way by saying, well, you weren't in combat, you're not a veteran. Yeah, that's just not how it works. So we've got to start by getting veterans to accept the honor of being a veteran. And then from there, we've got to, the book goes into talking about your trauma and your transition from the military. These are some of the biggest pieces of why veterans are committing suicide. Not understanding what they are as a veteran, not feeling the pride of a veteran, having the stigma of the traumas that you went through, especially our female veterans, and then not talking about it because from the greatest generation and before, you just didn't talk about your time in the service, except for the drinking and the good stuff and so on. Put that all together, and I've identified in the book by using my story as the example. And I wanted to know for decades what happened to me and why. Why was I suicidal? Why was I depressed? Why did I have so much anxiety? What the hell happened to me? That's what I was trying to figure out. And it all unfolds in some great stories that includes one of my grandfathers and his stories about landing on the beach in Normandy and walking all the way to Germany and back, and why he never talked about it until very late in his life. So the whole story is wrapped around veteran, understanding what a veteran is, transitioning from the military, and talking about your trauma with the focus on what happened to me and why.
Okay. All right, Frank, another question for him.
I think that, well, would you say that the societal world that the veterans came back into affects the percentage of suicides? I mean, World War II, the soldiers came back. They were victorious. Right? Sure, they had the combat experience that might affect them. I know my wife's father would not talk about it. Think he landed in D-Day in the same process, going all the way to Germany, and but in Korea, I don't know. There was no support. That much support for the Korean War, but definitely the Vietnam War, like you said, people coming back being called baby killers and everything and what have you. That would have a real effect on the veteran coming back, knowing that he put his service in, put himself into harm's way, and this is the gratitude he gets for it when he comes back to the States, and like you say, lasted for all the way to September 11th. I'd agree with that.
Yeah, Frank, you're spot on. When our vets came home from World War II, they felt like a veteran, right? Everybody stood, waved the flag, and so on. Korea, the lost war, and then Vietnam, and coming back to baby killer. Who the hell wants to come home to that? So when I came out of the service, listen, I'm a veteran, right? And then I get a disability notice, and I'm a disabled vet. And again, back then, just being called disabled wasn't a badge of honor. It was a nightmare, as I'm sure you guys know. All right. So the stigma of all of these things, especially post-Vietnam, weighs heavy on all veterans. Doesn't matter what you did, whether it's combat or non-combat. And as I like to say, it takes roughly 8 or 9 people to put one man or woman in uniform and with bullets pointed downrange. Of those 8 or 9, it is a stunning statistic how many non-combat veterans commit suicide. Right now, the number 3 statistically for suicide is women, female veterans. Okay. And if I'm going to get a little bit long-winded here, but I'm trying to really nail down this point. When I was in DC, I spent 10 years down there as a volunteer for the Vet Force, the largest veterans entrepreneur organization in the country, representing over 300 service organizations, which got Public Law 109-461 on the books, called the Vet First Contracting Act. Big story. All right. What I learned down there through number 2 at the VVA, which is Rick Weidman, the Vietnam era, 64 years and older, they were the highest suicide rate in the veteran community. But statistically, they tend to cut off at 64 within the VA or other organizations when they do the search and research on suicides. Now, take that to the last 7-8 years. That shift has now come to Gulf War and Gulf II. And of course, the tail end of this 20+ year war, with female veterans becoming the 3rd statistically highest suicide rate among all of our veterans. So it is a staggering statistic.
Wow. It's crazy for sure. Where is the best place people can pick up your book and learn more about you? The first book and then the second.
Yeah. So the first book that kind of opens up the eyes to what happens to veterans when they're young, because most veterans tend to have a broken family or a busted home and they go in the military and they don't want to talk about it. Well, I'm talking about it. Okay. I've had to learn how to sidestep my date with suicide, and I've been successful. So if you go to Amazon and pick up 2,442 Steps to Crazy, I'm telling you, if you read the reviews on this book, it is an emotional ride. So if you get the book, get a pillow and bring time, because you don't want to throw the book, and this book will piss you off. All right. So throw the pillow and bring time, because it's a page turner.
All right. Thank you again, Paul, for coming by. Appreciate it, sir.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for having me on.
You're listening